Imagine building a life from the ground up, fighting against everything and everyone who told you that you weren't enough. Emily Johnson did just that. But after years of heartbreak, betrayal, and sacrifice, she finally found someone who saw her for who she truly was, or so she thought. When Emily's world shatters and the man she loves is offered everything he's ever dreamed of, she faces the ultimate test. Will she fight for the love they built, or will she let him go and set both of them free? In this emotional roller coaster, Emily must make a choice that will change the course of her life forever. Will love be enough to hold them together, or will the weight of ambition tear them apart? Stay tuned because you won't believe how this story ends. Trust me, you'll want to see it all the way through. Emily Johnson was born into a family bound by tradition, strict old-fashioned beliefs and expectations that were suffocating. The firstborn child, Emily's existence was overshadowed by the glaring absence of the son her parents had hoped for. From an early age, she learned that being a girl in her family meant being less, being second best, and being overlooked. Her mother, too, bore the heavy weight of this cultural disappointment. The old-fashioned thinking of her family was merciless, blaming Emily's mother for not delivering the son that was expected of her. The emotional burden of this was too much for Emily's mother to bear, and it showed. Her love for Emily was tainted with frustration, resentment, and a constant reminder that she had failed the family. As Emily's younger brother was born, the difference between the two was glaring. The family showered him with affection and attention, while Emily learned early on that her role was to take the back seat. It wasn't just the clothes or the food that were handed to her brother, but also the warmth and security she needed, especially during the bitter winter nights when she found herself tucked under threadbare blankets while he slept comfortably in his own bed. Emily's dreams, her hopes, and her desires were always stifled by the expectations placed on her. While her brother was sent to an elite private school, Emily was told that a girl like her had no place in such institutions. It wasn't just her parents' words that cut deep, it was the entire system that seemed to reject her. But Emily was not one to stay down. She wasn't content to accept the life handed to her, where being a girl meant she had no choice but to obey, serve, and sacrifice. Her ambition was sparked in those quiet moments when she would hide under the covers with books as her only companions. Those books were her secret weapon, the small rebellion she could manage in a home where everything else was dictated by tradition. At 16, Emily pushed through the doubts and laughter of her family and begged her father to let her continue her education. His response was cold and brutal. Why waste money on a girl? Her father believed a girl's place was at home, not in school. It wasn't just cruel, it was his belief system, one that suffocated her at every turn. But Emily didn't give up. At 16, she took matters into her own hands, finding a job at a textile factory, where she worked long hours while secretly studying at night. She was careful not to let her family know for fear of further criticism. Despite the weight of her family's disapproval, Emily persevered. She passed the high school equivalency exam at 19, a success she achieved entirely on her own. No one had supported her. No one had cheered her on, but she had done it. That moment marked the turning point in her life, the moment when she knew she was capable of more than what her family had ever envisioned for her. It was the moment she made the decision to no longer accept being treated as less simply because of her gender. Her independence grew as she left the confines of her family home, walking into the unknown, determined to carve out a life that was truly hers. She found a small apartment and began working as a waitress in a restaurant in Manhattan. Life was tough, but it was hers to shape, hers to control. Emily soon met James Carter, the son of the restaurant's owner. He was a soldier recently back from duty, looking to finish his education and start a new chapter in his life. He was different from the men she had known, kind, genuine, and unlike anyone she had ever met. The attraction was immediate, but so was the fear. Could she really let herself love someone after all the pain she had endured? James was the first person to see her for who she truly was, not for the labels society or her family had placed on her. He saw Emily for her strength, her heart, her intelligence, and he admired her for it. Their relationship blossomed, and before long they decided to marry, though their union was kept a secret. Neither of them wanted the harsh judgment from their families or society. But when James's mother found out about the marriage, her reaction was explosive. She was furious. I hired you because I felt sorry for you, but this, she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. How dare you marry my son without my permission? Emily, taken aback by the intensity of her anger, tried to explain. We love each other, she said quietly. No, you don't belong with my son. His mother spat. I've given him everything he needs and you've just brought chaos into our lives. In an instant, Emily was fired, thrown out of the house she had been working in, and cut off from the family that had once been a source of her livelihood. But Emily didn't break. She left determined to never again be anyone's second choice, to never again be made to feel unworthy. James promised they would make things right. They would find their own way. But even as they tried to settle into their new life together, the weight of James's mother's rejection followed them, casting a shadow over their happiness. For a brief moment, Emily and James believed they could outrun the weight of their family's expectations, carving out their own version of happiness. They were young in love and defiant, with a passion that burned brighter than any obstacle they faced. They started their life together in the smallest apartment, but to them it was a palace. The struggle to make ends meet was hard, but their love made every hardship bearable. However, Emily's dream of building a new life came crashing down sooner than she expected. James's mother, Mrs. Carter, could not and would not accept her son's choice. The day she discovered the marriage, she didn't just get angry, she exploded. You think you can just come into my life like this, marrying my son in secret without even asking for my permission? She shouted, her eyes wild with fury. Emily, stunned and shaken, tried to explain, but the words died in her throat as Mrs. Carter raged on. I have given him everything he needs to succeed, and this is how you repay me. How dare you bring chaos into my perfect world? Her words felt like daggers piercing Emily's chest. The weight of her words was unbearable, but it wasn't the cruel accusations that stung the most. It was the simple fact that in an instant, Emily had lost everything she had worked so hard for. Mrs. Carter fired her from the job she had fought to keep, leaving her without a means to support herself. But worse, she was cast aside, no longer welcome in the family that had been her only lifeline. Emily tried to hold on to the last shred of dignity she had left, but it was a fight she couldn't win. The tension between her and James escalated as his mother's influence seeped into their relationship. Every word, every glance, every interaction felt like a reminder of how small and insignificant she was in the eyes of those who should have been supporting her. Still, Emily wasn't one to back down. She packed her things, walking out of the apartment she had shared with James, determined to never let anyone make her feel inferior again. She moved into a cheap one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, her new reality as harsh as it was liberating. She found a job waiting tables at a local diner, doing what she had to do to survive. But it wasn't just her survival she wanted anymore. It was her power back. She wasn't going to let James's family or even James himself dictate her future. She had fought too long and too hard for her freedom, and she wasn't going to let him or anyone else take it from her. Now James, however, was torn. He loved Emily, but his loyalty to his family was suffocating him. The guilt, the pressure from his mother, the judgment, it all clouded his thoughts. The more Emily fought for her independence, the more distant he became. He started spending more time away from home, often coming home late, his excuses growing thinner each time. Emily knew something wasn't right, but she couldn't bring herself to confront him. She had been let down too many times, and she couldn't bear another heartbreak. Then came the day that shattered everything. Emily had just finished her shift at the diner and was heading home when she received a call from James. His voice was tense, strained, like he was holding something back. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me at the restaurant tomorrow? The next evening, Emily arrived, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. James sat at the table in the restaurant, looking more uncomfortable than she had ever seen him. She took a seat across from him, her mind racing. Emily, he started, his voice low. I think it's time we talk about us. The words hung in the air, and Emily felt her world tilt. What do you mean? She asked, barely able to keep the tremor from her voice. He hesitated, his hands clenching and unclenching on the table. I don't know how to say this, but I think it's best if we go our separate ways. Emily froze, her breath catching in her throat. What she whispered, her voice barely audible. James, what are you talking about? His eyes darted around the room, avoiding hers. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I think it's time we end this. You deserve better than this, Emily. You deserve someone who can give you what you need. The words hit her like a ton of bricks, leaving her breathless, disoriented. But I love you. We've been through so much together. Her voice cracked with emotion. I'm sorry, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. But I don't love you the way I should. I think we're both better off without each other. Emily stood up, her knees shaking. She had never felt more betrayed in her life. The man she had trusted, the man she had loved, was walking away without a second thought. She turned and left the restaurant, her world crumbling around her. As she walked through the streets of Brooklyn, the cold air biting her skin, she realized something. She had always put others first, always tried to make everyone else happy. But now she had to focus on herself. For the first time in years, she was going to live for her. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She had lost so much, and the pain of James's rejection would stay with her for a long time. But she wasn't going to let it destroy her. She was stronger than that. And if there was one thing she knew for sure, it was that she would rebuild her life on her own terms. Emily Johnson's world was a battlefield, and every step she took felt like a victory, but each victory came at a cost. After James's betrayal, she found herself standing alone in the ruins of a life she had built with so much love and hope. The cold streets of Brooklyn became her new reality, where she spent nights lost in her own thoughts, trying to piece together the broken parts of herself. But even in the darkness, there was a spark inside her, a flicker of resilience she couldn't ignore. She didn't have much, but Emily was resourceful. She found work waiting tables at a diner, a job that barely paid the bills, but it was hers. It was her first taste of independence. For the first time in her life, Emily wasn't living for anyone else. She wasn't trying to meet anyone's expectations, not her family's, not James's, and certainly not his mother's. She was living for herself, and it felt liberating, even if it was painful. One evening, as Emily was wiping down the counter at the diner, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unfamiliar number. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. Hi, Emily. I hope this message finds you well. This is David Miller, a client of the restaurant. I have a position available that might interest you. If you're interested, please give me a call. David Miller. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Curiosity got the better of her, and she dialed the number. The conversation was brief but promising. David was a successful businessman, and he had heard about Emily's work ethic through the grapevine. He needed someone to help maintain his home, and he was willing to pay more than she had ever imagined. He was polite, straightforward, and respectful, nothing like the men she had known. She agreed to meet him the following day, feeling both apprehensive and hopeful. The next morning, Emily stood in front of David's townhouse in the heart of Manhattan. The building was tall, elegant, and intimidating. She took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. David answered almost immediately, greeting her with a warm smile. Welcome, Emily. I'm glad you could make it. He gestured for her to enter, and as she stepped inside, the sleek, minimalist decor took her breath away. It felt like a different world. David explained the job. 3 days a week, she would clean, cook, and manage the household. It seemed simple enough, but as they spoke, Emily realized that this job could be the fresh start she had been waiting for. The pay was better than anything she had earned, and there was no question about respect. David's kindness and professionalism made it clear that he valued her work and her as a person. Over the next few weeks, Emily settled into her new routine. Her days were filled with cleaning, cooking, and organizing, but she found a strange comfort in it. The quiet of the mansion, the rhythm of her work, and the knowledge that she was building a life she could call her own filled her with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't just the work that kept her going. It was David's presence. He was always polite, always kind, but there was something more. As the days passed, Emily began to notice the small things, the way he would bring her coffee in the morning, the way he would ask about her day. She had never experienced this kind of attention before, and as much as she tried to fight it, she began to feel a pull toward him. One evening after a long day of work, Emily sat in the kitchen preparing dinner when David walked in. He looked a bit flustered, as if something was on his mind. He hesitated before speaking. "Emily," he began, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done. You've been a huge help around here, and I really appreciate it." Emily looked up from the stove, surprised by his sudden seriousness. "You're welcome, David. I'm just doing my job." He smiled softly, but there was a hint of something else in his eyes. "I know, but it's more than that. You've made a difference. I don't know if I could have managed without you." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She didn't know how to respond. She had spent so many years believing she wasn't worthy of kindness, let alone affection. But here with David, things felt different. As the weeks passed, Emily and David grew closer. Their conversations became more personal, and she began to open up to him about her past, about James, about her struggles, about everything that had brought her to this moment. David listened without judgment, offering her a space to heal that she hadn't even realized she needed. One evening, as they sat on the patio of David's townhouse, sipping wine and talking about their dreams for the future, David's gaze softened Emily. He said, his voice barely a whisper, "I know we've been through different things, but I think we've both been looking for something more, something real, and I think I found that with you." Her heart skipped a beat, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a spark of hope. Could this be the new beginning she had been waiting for? Could David really be the person who would help her rebuild her life, not just as someone's wife or someone's servant, but as herself? Just as she was about to respond, there was a knock at the door. David's face faltered for a split second, but he quickly composed himself. "I'll get it," he said, standing up. Emily watched him walk toward the door, her mind racing with possibilities. Could she really open her heart again? Was she ready to love after everything she had been through? As David opened the door, Emily's phone buzzed. It was a message from her daughter, Sophia. "Mom, I miss you. I'm doing okay, but I really want to see you soon." Emily's heart swelled with love and a renewed sense of purpose. She had a new life to build, a new chapter to start, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold her back. The days that followed were like a dream that Emily had almost forgotten how to dream. She worked diligently at David's home, putting her heart into everything she did, and slowly, with every passing moment, she felt her old self begin to emerge, the strong, determined woman who had once fought for her independence, for a life of her own. David had become more than just an employer. He had become a friend, a confidant, and over time, the man who made her believe in the possibility of love again. They spent long nights talking about their pasts, their dreams, and their fears. David spoke of his own hardships, the loneliness he'd endured, and the struggles of building his career. Emily shared her journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and the strength she had found within herself. And in those moments, they began to see each other not just as two people with difficult pasts, but as two souls seeking something real, something lasting. But life, as it always does, threw one last curveball at them. One evening, as Emily was putting away the dishes after dinner, David walked in, his face pale, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. Her heart skipped a beat. She put down the dish she was holding and looked at him, her mind racing. "What's wrong?" David took a deep breath. "I've been offered a promotion at work, a big one. But there's a catch." He paused, his eyes locked with hers. "It's in another city far from here. I'd have to leave in a few weeks." The weight of his words hung in the air. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She had grown so attached to David, to the life they were building together. The thought of losing him, of having to let go, was more than she could bear. For a moment, everything around them was silent. Then Emily, her voice barely a whisper, asked, "What does that mean for us? For our future?" David looked down, his eyes full of uncertainty. "I don't know, Emily. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't want to lose what we've started. But I also can't pass up this opportunity. It's everything I've worked for." Emily felt a mixture of emotions flood her heart: sadness, fear, and a deep, aching love. But as she looked at David, she realized that this was the test she had been preparing for all along. The test of her own strength, the test of her ability to love and to let go when necessary. "David," she said softly, stepping closer to him, "I understand. This is your dream, and I want you to go for it. I won't stand in the way of your happiness, just as I never stood in the way of my own." She smiled, though her heart ached. We both have a future to build, but that future doesn't have to be tied to one place, one moment. It's what we make of it wherever we are. David reached for her hand, his grip firm and warm. You're incredible, Emily. You deserve everything and more. With tears in her eyes, Emily held on to the man who had shown her what real love could be. But she knew deep down that love was not about holding someone back. It was about setting them free, allowing them to become the best versions of themselves. And if they were meant to be together, their paths would cross again. They stood there for a long while, not speaking, just holding on to each other, knowing that no matter what came next, they had something real, something that could never be taken away. As the days passed, Emily continued to work at David's home, but with a renewed sense of peace. She was no longer afraid of losing herself or the life she had fought so hard to build. She had found the strength to let go, to give David the freedom he needed to follow his dreams. And in return, she had given herself the greatest gift of all, the freedom to choose her own path, no matter where it led. It was then that Emily received a letter in the mail. It was from her daughter Sophia, who had been studying abroad. The letter read, "Mom, I just wanted to let you know how proud I am of you. You've taught me the most important lesson of all, that no matter what life throws at us, we have the strength to rise above it. I hope one day when I have my own family, I can be as strong and as loving as you." As Emily read the letter, tears filled her eyes. She had done it. She had made it through the hardest times of her life, and now her daughter was seeing the strength and resilience she had always tried to show her. And just as she finished reading the letter, David returned home. He had made his decision. "Emily," he said, his voice full of determination, "I've made up my mind. I want to be with you. No matter where life takes us, we'll go together." With those words, Emily knew that her journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. Emily's journey has been filled with heartache and triumph. After everything she's been through, do you think she made the right decision to let David go, even though it was so painful? What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this story, leave a 100 in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let me know which country you're tuning in from, and don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a little inspiration today.